There are betrayals that don't scream. They whisper. They don't arrive with fury, but with silence, slow and suffocating. When Lucas cheated on me, it didn't come as a dramatic revelation. It arrived like fog in the morning, gentle, creeping, and inescapable. For 7 years we had been in love, 4 of which were sealed in marriage. I believed, foolishly perhaps, that what we shared was sacred, that we had built something time itself could not touch. But people rarely destroy what they hate. More often they abandon what they no longer understand. And Lucas, like many who chase illusions, was drawn to the glow of something untainted by time, something young, something eager, something that didn't yet know how heavy love could become. I didn't catch him in the act. There were no slammed doors or teary confrontations, just a morning, a window, the quiet ache of realization settling into my chest like morning frost. I remember watching the sky shift from black to blue, feeling that familiar chill on my skin, and making a decision I never thought I would. If they could dismantle my life so carelessly, then I would make sure they never rebuilt theirs in peace. This wasn't rage, it was clarity. It was the silence of a woman who had loved deeply and lost profoundly. As the sun touched the edge of the earth, Lucas appeared at the top of the stairs. I was still scrolling through Chloe's social feed on a secret account. She had just posted a picture, a white shirt, a denim skirt, that bright, unburdened face full of vitality and naive charm, the same charm that had turned his head. The caption was simple: "Red date, go." I stared at it, heart sinking, fingers frozen above the screen. It wasn't just a fling. It was a plan, a future, a betrayal built with intention, not accident. Then he walked toward me, wearing that same white shirt and jeans, mimicking youth like a child playing dress-up, believing charm could mask decay. His smile, the one that once melted every defense in me, now felt like a cruel joke carved into a face I barely recognized. "I'm going out," he said lightly, brushing my hair like he used to, a familiar gesture now void of meaning. And for a fleeting second, I wanted to believe him again. I wanted to believe we could go back to when love was real, when we laughed without bitterness, when we touched without flinching. But illusions, once shattered, cut deep, and as I watched him walk away, I smiled back, thin, empty. I knew that smile would be the last soft thing I gave him. From here on, the storm would speak for me. I had been planning this for 6 months, quietly, patiently. Revenge isn't always loud. It often wears the mask of control. He wouldn't suffer publicly, no. He would unravel in silence, just like I had. A tear slipped down my cheek, and I hated that it did. I had promised myself I'd be strong. But how do you erase 11 years of shared laughter, sacrifices, and intertwined dreams with just one decision? The night he betrayed me had seemed so ordinary. Dinner, laughter, that sacred routine we used to cherish. We both worked long hours, so these small dinners were the glue that held us together. But that night, something was off. He kept checking his phone, smiling at it, smiling in a way that didn't belong to our moment. I didn't ask right away, I observed. The third time, I couldn't hold it in. I set my chopsticks down slowly and looked at him. "What's going on, Lucas? Why the rush to respond?" He stiffened, just for a second. Then came the lie, soft, practiced. "Just work, urgent stuff from the team." And to distract me, he placed my favorite part of the fish into my bowl, just like always. "Your favorite," he whispered, but his voice was too smooth, too careful. And I knew. I had always known how truth sounds when it breathes. This wasn't it. That night everything continued, as if normal. We ate, we talked, we lay down in bed, side by side, skin to skin, but miles apart. As he drifted into sleep, I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding with doubts, too loud to ignore. Eventually, I rose without a sound. The house was still, as if holding its breath. I crept into the study and reached for his phone. We had never hidden passwords from each other. We never had to. But trust, once broken, turns permission into violation. No strange numbers, no explicit texts. But then I saw her name, Chloe, pinned in his favorites. My heart faltered. I tapped her profile. A cartoon avatar, empty message history, too clean, too careful. And so I looked deeper. I opened her moments, and in those curated snapshots I saw everything. Her life, her smile, her joy, her rising sun, a world I no longer belonged to. And beneath it all, one haunting truth. He had chosen her. Her photos were everywhere. Selfies taken in soft light, always with the same luminous smile, the kind that fills a screen like sunlight through open blinds. She looked young, full of life, untouched by the weight of consequence. And though I hated what she had become to me, I couldn't deny her beauty. Even as a stranger, I could see it, the effortless charm, the magnetic innocence. Then came the post that shattered the fragile hope I didn't know I still carried. 2 months ago, I found a photo of Lucas in her private circle, his face sharp, unmistakable, smiling with a confidence I hadn't seen in months. The caption read, "I'm very happy to have interviewed my idol. He's truly an exceptional senior I've admired for a long time." The background was unmistakable. His office, down to the books I helped him arrange, the small cactus I gave him after his first promotion. I stared at the image, hand trembling slightly. Part of me still clung to the illusion, searching for innocence in a picture full of implications. I scrolled down, pulse quickening, and then I saw it, a group photo, crowded, casual, but something about it made my breath catch. They were apart, physically, but the space between them spoke more than distance. It was tension, familiarity, something invisible, but unmistakably there. It was taken at the anniversary event for University A. He had told me he was giving a speech. I missed it because of a business trip. I remembered calling him that night, laughing as we reminisced about our own university days. He sounded warm, nostalgic. He sounded like Lucas. But now, seeing that photo, I realized I hadn't been speaking to the man I thought I knew. I had been speaking to a ghost in a borrowed voice. That's when the pieces began to fall into place. Not suddenly, but with the quiet devastation of a puzzle completing itself. The night she posted from a rooftop restaurant, Lucas said he was working late. The dolphin photo, he had claimed to be in a client meeting. The pastries from that popular bakery, the ones he brought home, insisting I share them online, were the same pastries she had photographed the day before, laughing, carefree. He was never in her pictures, but the shadows matched, the timelines aligned. His absence in her posts only confirmed his presence behind them. I had become an unwilling detective of my own heartbreak, gathering evidence no one had asked me to find. And now that I had it, I felt no satisfaction, only silence. I put my phone down and sat by the window again. My hands and feet were cold, not the kind of cold that comes from temperature, but the kind that seeps in when something inside you breaks. I hugged my arms around my body, trying to hold myself together, but there was no warmth in that corner of the room, no comfort in the memories. The tears didn't fall like rain. They slid down, quiet and heavy, each drop a goodbye, a farewell to a life I thought was still mine. 11 years, 7 in love, 4 in marriage. I had believed in us with the faith of someone who builds a home on sacred ground. I thought forever was a promise, not a concept. I thought love meant we would always choose each other, but maybe my idea of forever had always been too fragile for a world this unpredictable. And then came the cruelest part, not hating him, but hating myself for knowing him so well, for understanding the way he thinks, the way he hides, the way he smiles when he's lying. I remembered the day we met, University A, freshman year, a crowded cafeteria. He was volunteering at the food counter, fumbling awkwardly with a spoon too big for the tray. Even with a mask on, his features stood out, sharp, striking. The cafeteria lady scolded him for serving too much meat, and he rolled his eyes, smiling with that boyish charm. "Thank you, sis," he said, half mocking, half sweet. It was ridiculous, but I smiled. Later that day, we ran into each other again in the library. We reached for the same book. Our hands touched. He wasn't wearing a mask this time. I saw his face clearly, And just like that, my heart betrayed me, skipping, stalling, remembering something it hadn't yet learned. Back then, I believed in fate, in meaningful meetings, in love that reveals itself through the ordinary. And maybe that's why it all hurts so much now. Because the person I met that day, the boy I gave my heart to, no longer exists. And I don't know who took his place. Time seemed to freeze. He handed me the book without a word, picked up another, and walked away. No conversation, no acknowledgement. It left me with a strange feeling, a mix of irritation and something I couldn't quite place. After all, I was no stranger to being noticed, but I was determined. I decided to head over to his serving counter later that evening, just to see him again, maybe even vent some of my frustration. And within 2 hours, we met again at the debate club meeting. I met him for the first time. Both of us were freshmen, still getting accustomed to the hustle and bustle of university life. I learned that his name was Lucas. The meeting had just ended, and I watched him quickly gather his things. His pace hurried as if he had somewhere important to be. I couldn't help but feel a strange curiosity about him. As he walked past me, a sudden thought crossed my mind, and before I could think it through, I found myself calling out to him. "Lucas." He paused and turned around. The sun was behind him, casting a glow that made him appear almost ethereal. And for a moment, everything around us seemed to blur that simple glance. His face partly shadowed, and his expression unreadable, struck something deep within me, a sensation I couldn't quite describe. "What's up?" he asked, his voice deep and effortless, the kind of voice that made you want to listen just a little longer. I approached him, offering a smile that felt a little too eager, my eyes reflecting the warmth of the afternoon sunlight. "Lucas, we've bumped into each other 3 times today. Have you ever heard the saying that if you meet someone once by chance, it's fate, but if you meet 3 times, it's destiny?" He raised an eyebrow slightly and then smiled. Though it wasn't a smile filled with much warmth, his gaze softened, but his words were anything but romantic. "I haven't heard of it, but Adams, I'm going to be late for my part-time job. Bye." With that, he turned around and left without another glance, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there feeling foolish, but also oddly exhilarated. Well, it seemed flirting wasn't my forte. Still later that evening, when hunger led me to the cafeteria, I couldn't resist visiting his window for food. This time he didn't seem flustered or distracted like he had earlier. Instead, he smiled as he handed me my meal. And just before I left, I noticed he slipped an extra chicken leg onto my tray. A small but significant gesture. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a tacit connection that neither of us addressed, but both felt our relationship developed in quiet, almost imperceptible ways. The day we confirmed that we were officially together didn't feel dramatic or overly romantic. It was just an ordinary day. After the club meeting, we stayed behind to organize the materials together, and then he walked me back to my dormitory. When we reached the stairs, he hesitated for a moment, pulling something out of his backpack. It was a small, delicate box, and inside was a star-shaped bracelet. His eyes, which were usually warm and confident, were now tinged with nervousness. "Charlotte, Can you be my girlfriend?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It was the first time I had seen him this vulnerable. His hands were shaking as he held the bracelet, and I could see him lick his lips nervously as he waited for my response. I smiled softly, my heart racing in my chest. "Yes," I said, nodding vigorously, perhaps a little too eagerly. Then I held out my wrist for him to put it on. It took him a long time to fasten the bracelet, his hands trembling slightly as they brushed against my skin. Later that night, we held each other for what felt like forever, our bodies entwined, as we tried to make sense of the world that was suddenly so much bigger with each other in it. Back in my dormitory, I lay on my bed replaying the events of the day, over and over in my mind. After months of subtle flirting and careful steps, I had finally gotten what I wanted over the following years. We supported each other, built our lives together, and promised to trust each other. We faced challenges, graduation, the looming threat of breakups, and the difficulties of starting a career, but we overcame them. Our wedding day came a day when we promised to be together forever, and we became the couple everyone admired. As time passed, we both grew, changing in ways that only the passing years could explain. Lucas had become a man who was more mature, more thoughtful, and more considerate. Someone who was as well groomed as I had helped him become. But as I stood by his side, watching him transform into a person everyone else admired, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was slipping away that night. As I scrolled through social media, I saw a photo of the girl, Chloe. She was stunning, a true beauty, and my heart sank as I saw her smiling in the picture. Clearly, an important guest at the anniversary celebration of a university. She was a reporter interviewing alumni, and suddenly I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed. We had promised each other forever, hadn't we? But my attempts at self-reassurance failed. I couldn't ignore the way the photo of them together, Lucas and Chloe, kept replaying in my mind. I had to know more. By the time the sun was rising, I had already decided to investigate. I sent the girl's photo to a contact who could help me dig deeper. My stomach churned with anxiety, but I told myself that everything would be fine. It wasn't until the next day that I received the results. And they confirmed my fears. Chloe was Lucas's junior at university, studying computer science at a university. Her background was impeccable. Her parents were teachers at a prestigious school, and she had been an excellent student all her life. And there it was in black and white photos of Chloe and Lucas at a popular restaurant, at a revolving restaurant, and even at a cafe near his office, though they hadn't displayed any overt affection. The connection between them was undeniable. I couldn't help but wonder if I should meet this girl. Just a few days later, I received an invitation to return to my alma mater for a sharing session. It was the perfect opportunity to meet Chloe face to face on the day of the event. I had a successful session with my mentor and several students. And after it was over, my mentor arranged for an interview with the school newspaper as casually as I could manage. I mentioned that Lucas had told me about the young reporter who had interviewed him. My mentor, eager to please, arranged for Chloe to be the one to interview me. She had attended my entire talk, and I noticed her unease when my mentor mentioned Lucas and me, describing how we had led our debate team to victory and how Lucas had always supported me. Chloe's discomfort was palpable. After the interview, I approached her, smiling warmly. "I read your last interview with my husband. It was really well written. I'm sure this one will be just as good." Her grip on her handbag tightened, and I could see that the confident, radiant girl from the photo had disappeared, replaced by someone who suddenly seemed unsure of herself. The interview ended quietly, with little more than small talk. I later shared a dinner with the teacher and several students, including Chloe, who stayed uncomfortably quiet throughout as the evening wore on under my subtle direction. My mentor mentioned Lucas and me again, and I could see Chloe's face growing paler with each passing moment. It was clear that she was struggling with something, perhaps the weight of the truth that had been hanging between us all along. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes it wasn't necessary to press harder. The truth had already been laid bare. When I got home that night, I found Lucas sitting on the sofa waiting for me, his phone in hand. As soon as he saw me walk in, he immediately greeted me with a warm smile, his voice casual, but laced with curiosity. "How was your visit to your alma mater today?" he asked. "Why didn't you tell me?" "There was an interview with the school newspaper." It seemed the little girl had said something to him, probably complaining about something. I pretended to be oblivious, glancing at him with feigned innocence. The feedback from the instructors at the sharing session was good. The interviews were arranged by the instructors. Her. "How did you know I had an interview with the school newspaper?" His smile faltered for a brief moment, but he quickly recovered, responding in a nonchalant tone. "The young reporter who interviewed you is the same one who interviewed me." He added me on WeChat when he interviewed me, before and after talking to you. He told me we are a perfect match. He said, the girl has good taste. I couldn't help but chuckle at his attempt to brush it off. Though something tugged at me, the girl didn't add me on WeChat. Seems like in her eyes, Senior Bennett holds a different kind of status at my words. I could feel his arms round me stiff, and noticeably, the tension in his touch becoming palpable. After a moment, he pulled me tighter into his embrace, shaking me playfully. Wife is jealous. He teased, his voice dripping with affection. I'm so happy that you are jealous, but I think she only added me because I'm her senior. You have to believe me. As he spoke, he nuzzled his head against my neck and shoulders, his intentions unmistakably clear. But despite the warmth of his embrace, there was a cold knot forming in my stomach. I wanted to shout at him, demand the truth, ask why he'd betrayed me, but my mind held me back. The lack of concrete evidence NWD at me, except for those photos, which, while they seemed to tell a different story, could never be enough to prove anything. We had been so sweet together for 11 years. He had always been so good to me, so considerate that my parents adored him, my friends trusted him. Everyone around me thought he was the perfect partner, incapable of betraying me. If I confronted him now, I would only end up losing more than I gained. The anger inside me was like a wild stallion, charging against the walls of my chest, desperate to break free. But I had nowhere to channel it. I wanted to rip that smug smile off his face, but instead I muttered that I was tired and excused myself, rushing into the bathroom to escape that night. I woke up again in the early hours, my mind racing. I turned to look at the man sleeping beside me, and a dark thought crossed my mind. I could almost feel the urge to hurt him silently. I reached for his phone, the familiar weight of it in my hand, and clicked on Chloe's profile picture. Once again, the conversation box remained empty. He was either too cautious or he trusted me too much. Thinking I would never look at his phone, I scrolled through his WeChat moments. The latest post, from the night before, showed a happy selfie with the caption, "I feel comforted, happy." The post just after our interview that afternoon was brief. A single sentence, "Very sad, Lucas, comforting the little girl." But how was it over voice or just a text? What exactly did they say? My head throbbed with pain, my heart ached, and my hands trembled as I held his phone. Once again, I found myself sitting there, the hours slipping by unnoticed, until the first light of dawn crept in, and he remained none the wiser. The next day, I received the first draft of the interview article from Chloe in an email. It was good, too. Good. I quickly replied with an okay, but my mind was elsewhere. Neither of us mentioned WeChat, but the girl's patience was surprising. Then something caught my eye. A small account with a smiling profile picture, and Chloe already added her WeChat moments, like a voyeur's window into her life. Made me sick to my stomach. I hated myself for watching, for becoming someone I didn't recognize. As time passed, I became numb. The ache in my chest dulled, and my actions grew detached. The day before her WeChat update read, "Looking forward to the amusement park tomorrow." The next day, I followed them like a voyeur. Lucas had changed out of the suit he wore when he left that morning, and donned a sweatshirt that matched Chloe's. I watched them a few meters away, holding hands as they strolled through the park. She was good at playing the coquettish role, shaking his hand, looking up at him with those sweet eyes, whispering something I couldn't hear, probably asking him to join her on the roller coaster. I thought Lucas would refuse. 8 years ago, he'd sworn never to get on a roller coaster after he'd thrown up on one the last time I dragged him on. But I was wrong. He smiled, ruffled her hair affectionately, and sat beside her together. They rode the roller coaster. I watched, feeling the bile rise in my throat, hearing the shrieks of joy as the ride plunged down, and I told myself again and again to take revenge on them. I followed them around the park, watching as they shared a Mickey Miller headband. As Lucas gently wiped the ice cream from the corner of Chloe's mouth, I watched them hand in hand, walking forward until something inside me snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood there frozen, as the tourists brushed past me, bumping into me without a second glance. I didn't care. I was numb, detached until a little girl, no older than 4 or 5, came up to me, holding out a tissue. "Auntie, don't cry." I looked down at her, my vision blurred by the tears welling up in my eyes. Her face was streaked with tears, and I could barely focus on her small features as they contorted with concern. She had a tender innocence, unaware of the turmoil unfolding around her. I picked up the tissue she handed me and forced a smile, though I knew it must have been uglier than crying itself. Her little voice cut through the heavy silence, sharply criticizing me. "Auntie is so beautiful. It would be ugly if she cried. Yes, I am beautiful. I always have been. And Lucas, with his ungrateful heart, has thrown away everything that once meant something, fed to the dogs, given to a wolf. I don't want to delve into the reasons behind his betrayal. I don't want to waste another ounce of energy wondering why he broke his promises. What matters now is pulling myself away, severing the ties that once bound us. Life is long, far longer than 11 years, and I am only 30. I haven't even begun to live." Turning away from the girl, I walked out of the room. I didn't need him anymore, not after everything. But I knew there would be a price to pay, and I had every intention of making him feel it. By the time I returned home, the cold stillness of the house seemed to suffocate me. Half a month had passed since I first sensed something was wrong. Since I knew he had betrayed me, every day had been a blur. Yet I had forced myself to watch their interactions, as if I were desensitizing myself to the poison. The sweetness of our past, the happiness we once shared, had faded into nothing, replaced by the bitter sting of disappointment. I spent hours in the study, sorting through everything, every asset, every possession in the house. I had studied finance for a reason. After all, I had always managed our investments. Now, I would use that knowledge to turn our once thriving family into one buried in debt. Every detail was meticulously planned. It was a slow game, but a deliberate one. I would make sure the consequences of his actions were severe, but it was his company that weighed heavily on me. He had built it from the ground up during his graduate years, 7 years of hard work, financing, and expansion. All of it teetering on the brink of success, ready to go public. Yet, in the midst of all this, he chose to have an affair without a thought for the repercussions. It wasn't just Chloe he was betraying. It was everything he had worked for. I couldn't help but wonder, did he choose her after carefully considering the consequences? Or did he believe I would simply tolerate her presence in our lives, never questioning his loyalty? As the evening wore on, Lucas came home. He had changed out of the casual clothes he wore to the amusement park and slipped into the suit he had done that morning. How effortlessly he switched between lives, between versions of himself. He approached me on the sofa, wrapping his arms round me in a familiar gesture. Yet no matter how much I tried to relax, I couldn't shake the disgust that surged through me. There was no trace of Chloe on him, but I still recoiled. How could I let him touch me when I knew the truth? He spoke of his exhausting day at work, of the overtime and the stress. I nodded along, maintaining the pretense, while inside a storm of hatred brooded. How could he think I was so foolish? How long did he think he could play both sides without me noticing to avoid suspicion? I responded as I always did, sharing the mundane details of my day. Keeping up the act, I casually mentioned a new investment I was considering, one that my predecessor had introduced. Lucas smiled and reassured me, telling me that everything was in my hands, that he trusted me completely. But behind the smiles, I had already set my plan in motion. I had quietly transferred funds, cash flow, and mortgaged properties, moving them under the guise of new investments. And all the while, he remained oblivious. I couldn't help but watch Chloe, her extravagant lifestyle, becoming more and more apparent. I bribed a few people close to her, encouraging them to indulge her, to introduce her to the world of high-end parties and luxury. I watched as her desires grew, as her materialism consumed her. Lucas continued to pay her way all the while, believing that he could control it. that he could keep me in the dark, but I was no fool. When I saw them together in the hotel, I acted quickly. I drained everything, our savings, our assets, the family fortune, and turned it all into debt. If Lucas didn't use company funds, I made sure Chloe's indulgences would force him to dip into them. And when they bought a property together, I had already planned to bring him down, taking everything just as he had taken my trust. It wasn't just about the money, it was about watching them fall. I had no intentions of telling anyone, of showing my cards too early. I played my part, acting the loving wife, the devoted partner. No one suspected a thing, but now everything was about to implode. The carefully constructed facade would soon crumble, and only I understood the weight of the last 6 months. Lucas had received the divorce papers, the property preservation notice, and Chloe had received the lawsuit for the joint assets. I had made sure of that, leaving them with nothing but the wreckage of their choices. But under my careful guidance, the real estate they believed to be worth millions, was actually barely worth 10 million. Nothing compared to what they had expected. Lucas left the house the next morning, none the wiser. I went upstairs and packed his things. Each item, I folded a small victory. After 6 long months, I had finally done it. I had kicked him out. Lucas came back, his belongings piled up outside the door like a silent testament to his defeat. The door lock had been changed, the fingerprint access removed. He pressed the doorbell, his finger lingering a moment longer than necessary, as if hoping for something to happen for someone to open, but nothing did. He clenched his hands into fists, then released them in helpless frustration. The confident, carefree mood he'd carried with him earlier in the morning was now gone, replaced by a palpable tension in his posture. I stood still watching through the surveillance camera, feeling the weight of his anxiety. He paced back and forth in the hallway, his shoes scuffing against the floor in a rhythm of nervousness. As the minutes dragged on, the silence between us stretched farther. Finally, he took out his phone, and before I knew it, my own phone began to ring. The sound of it felt like a distant echo, muffled, yet sharp. I let it ring for what seemed like an eternity before finally answering Charlotte. His voice came through soft, but filled with an edge of desperation. "Open the door, let's talk, please." I could hear the quiet ache in his words. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over me. But when I finally spoke, my voice was steady, cold. "I don't want to talk to you. Let the lawyer handle everything." There was a long silence on the other end, the kind of silence that speaks volumes. I watched through the camera as he sank down to sit on the floor. His shoulders slumped in. Defeat, the sight of the man I had once loved so deeply, so completely like this, crumbled and broken, made my heart ache in a way I hadn't expected. "I don't want to divorce," he said, his voice deep and raw with emotion. His words lingered in the air like a whisper of hope, but I couldn't bring myself to respond with anything other than, "I'll see you in court, Lucas." I hung up the phone, watching him stare at the empty screen, as if he could still somehow reach me through it. He sat there motionless, lost in his thoughts, not even attempting to stand. I lay down on the bed in the bedroom, the door between us now, an insurmountable barrier. The stillness of the room echoed the turmoil inside me. I couldn't sleep, not with the sound of his presence just beyond the door. He sat there all night, and I couldn't help but wonder, was he regretful, angry, or was he simply empty? When I finally opened the door the next morning, my heart was heavy with 1,000 unspoken words. Lucas stood up slowly, as if each movement cost him something. His face was a mask of pain, his eyes pleading in a way I hadn't seen before. "Charlotte," he said softly, stepping closer, "we need to talk." I shook my head, the bitterness rising in my chest. "There's nothing to talk about. You and Chloe have already received the notice." "Right. I'll recover the shared property and I'll file for divorce. Everything will be handled by the lawyers." He took a step toward me, his hand reaching out. Desperate, "Please, Charlotte. Let's talk just for a moment." We stood there face to face, so close yet feeling miles apart. The distance between us was no longer just physical. It was everything that had built up between us over the years. 11 years, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Charlotte, please, can we talk? His words seemed to hit me with the weight of all that had been. The years, the promises, the love we'd once shared. It all felt like a distant memory. Now, 11 years, I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. So what? You still betrayed me. What do you expect me to say? You know, I won't tolerate any betrayal, any lies. His eyes flickered with something. Guilt, maybe, or regret, but he didn't look away. He kept looking at me, as if hoping I would see something in him that wasn't there anymore. Charlotte, he said again, his voice barely above a whisper. I turned my face away, my anger burning through the silence. What is there left to say? You've already made your choices. His face, once so full of life and warmth, now seemed to carry the weight of every mistake he'd made. The man I had once found so captivating, the one who had stolen my heart from the very first moment, now seemed foreign to me. I motioned for him to come inside, my voice quiet but firm. You've got nothing to say that I haven't already heard. He sat on the sofa, his shoulders slumped, as he stared down at his hands. Charlotte, I never wanted this. I love you. I've never thought of divorce. I know you probably won't believe me, but it's the truth. I didn't respond, my gaze fixed on the floor. His words felt hollow, empty, like a rehearsed apology. I know I've messed up, but I thought maybe you'd forgive me. I've been so stupid. Charlotte, Chloe, she made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. She made me feel wanted, admired, but it wasn't about you. It wasn't about replacing you. It was just, I don't know. I couldn't stop myself. I was selfish. I'm sorry. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the stillness of the room. You think I'll just accept your apology because you say you are sorry, that you are confused. I won't. I won't forgive you. You've ruined everything. He flinched at my words, but he didn't stop. Chloe won't affect us, Charlotte. She's just someone I was stupid with. But I love you still. I love you. Please don't let this be the end. The more he spoke, the more it felt like a twisted joke. Did he really think that I could accept his excuses, that I could just forgive him for everything? His lies, his betrayal, because he was sorry. How had he convinced himself that I would? I stood there staring at him in disbelief. I wanted to yell, to scream at him, to make him understand the hurt he had caused. But instead, I simply shook my head. You've already made your choice, Lucas. There's nothing more to say. With that, I walked away, leaving him, sitting in the silence of the room, as cold and empty as the love that had once filled it. It seems that after all this time, I still don't understand you, Lucas. I said, the words tumbling out, with a bitter edge. Maybe I don't understand men at all, but don't try to justify your betrayal. I've always been loyal, single-minded. If you want to talk, go ahead. I'm not here to listen to this nonsense. I cut him off, my voice cold and firm. I had no patience left for his excuses. I've already had someone investigate the money you've spent on Chloe. The house has been reclaimed, and the rest of the funds, less than $3 million, have been recovered. Don't even think about trying to pay anything in advance or embezzle a single penny before the divorce. As of now, our assets, our liabilities, and we share the debts. The shares in your company that are in my name belong to me, and I want 40% of your company's shares. His expression shifted, confusion clouding his features. Debt. He repeated, disbelief coloring his voice. Our family has enough cash flow. How can we be in debt? The mention of property brought him back to the conversation. He was starting to catch up, but it didn't matter. The damage had already been done. If your investments fail, everything is traceable and legal. You'll hear from my lawyer soon enough, I stated, matter-of-factly, my voice devoid of emotion. He scoffed, a sharp laugh escaping his lips. So this is how it's going to be. You've been planning this all along, haven't you? You are so rational, so selfish. The sting of his words hit harder than I expected. His sarcasm, laced with a touch of self-pity, only made my anger burn hotter. Yes, Lucas, I am. For the past 11 years, I've given everything for this marriage. I never once betrayed this family. It was you who destroyed everything. I worked so hard to build. I could feel the rage rising in my chest, every word heavy with accusation. You know, I've seen the group photo from the school celebration. The side profile shot she took of you, and I've watched you dress younger to match her. I've seen the pictures of you kissing, going in and out of hotels, holding hands, playing together. I even followed you to the amusement park, stood there just a few meters away, and cried. Do you understand that? You are a beast, Lucas. I never thought we'd end up here, but I'm just narrow-minded, right? Well, let me tell you, I will not let you have an easy life. Get out with a strength I didn't know I had. I grabbed Lucas by the arm and shoved him toward the door. He didn't react quickly enough to stop me. As he stumbled out, I slammed the door shut behind him, then collapsed against it. My sobs filling the silence, my chest tightened, and the tears flowed freely, as if I had been holding them in for years. Through the door, I heard him mutter a broken, "I'm sorry," but it meant nothing, not anymore. The lawyers took charge, executing the plan with laid out. They led the charge in resolving the lawsuit against Chloe, and I submitted the evidence of her misconduct to university, unknowing that justice was finally going to be served. I waited for the consequences to unfold, to watch Chloe face the punishment she deserved. News of our marriage collapse spread quickly through the financial and tech circles. There were whispers, rumors, and versions of the story that seemed to multiply by the day his company's financing faltered. And Chloe, her name now synonymous with scandal, could never hope to rise again in that world. But when I received the call from my parents, that was when doubt crept into my mind. It was the first time I felt truly uncertain about my decision. They had always adored Lucas. They remembered his favorite foods, the little habits he had, how kind he was to them. Every time I went home, the table was filled with his favorite dishes. They bragged about him, to everyone proud of their good. Al's son-in-law. I had never seen them so deeply invested in anyone now facing their inevitable disappointment. I wasn't sure how to bear it. "Mom." I answered the phone, my throat tight. I didn't know what to say. "Charlotte, have you had dinner yet?" Her voice came soft and warm. "Yes, I ate. How about you?" I forced a casual tone. "We've eaten too. No matter what happens, you have to take care of yourself. Do you need me and your dad to come over?" There was concern in her voice, a quiet sadness that made my chest ache. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words. "I'm sorry, Mom. I've let you down. I didn't take care of my marriage. You've always loved him so much. I know I've made you lose face in front of everyone. Sweetheart, you haven't done anything wrong." She said, her voice steady and reassuring. "He's the one at fault. If he's not right for you, we'll just let him go. We are not worried about him. You are our daughter, and nothing is more important than you. Your father's here too. Don't be afraid. Do what you need to do." My father's voice rang through the phone, and I could feel the warmth of his support grounding me. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. They were here for me. They understood growing up. I had always been the perfect child, the one who never disappointed them. This divorce, though, had been my greatest fear, disappointing them. Yet now I could feel their love. Their unwavering support, and for the first time, I didn't feel so alone. My parents came over that night, worried I would struggle being by myself. Their presence made me laugh. Through my tears, a bittersweet warmth flooding me. They were determined to take care of me no matter what. That made everything feel just a little more bearable. Lucas and his family, desperate to salvage something, had contacted my parents multiple times, trying to convince them to intervene to help avoid the divorce. But my parents were firm. They stood by me, their loyalty to me unwavering. The legal proceedings went smoothly. Chloe returned the money, and University A expelled her after conducting their investigation. The promising future she had worked so hard to build was shattered, all because of her choices. The day after the verdict, Chloe requested to meet with me. I was curious. She had never once tried to publicly expose her relationship with Lucas, nor had she caused any drama. What was it that she wanted? Now, when we met, she was a far cry from the confident girl I had seen before. Her energy had drained, replaced with anger and resentment. Her eyes flashed as she looked at me, but all I felt for her was pity. Are you satisfied? She spat, her voice thick with bitterness. I got expelled. I worked so hard to get into university's say, and you ruined it all. You ruined it yourself, I replied calmly, the words coming out without malice, but with an undeniable truth. I'm telling you, I love him, and he loves me. Why does it matter, Chester? If you ask the school to expel me, Lucas promised he would find a way to support me. And so what, if you've been together for 11 years, he's happy to be with me. He says, you know, I was ready to quietly stay by his side, even if he never divorced you. But you wanted to end things, and honestly, I owe you a thank you for that. I stared at the angry girl standing before me, unable to hide my disbelief. I used to think she was clever, but now it seems she's just plain foolish. Was she so blinded by love or anger that she couldn't see how ridiculous she sounded? Why was she trying so hard to provoke me, to make me unhappy? So you've always wanted to be the other woman? I asked, my voice cutting through the tension. Her face flushed, a deep shade of red, her mouth opening and closing, as if searching for words, but nothing meaningful came out. I could tell she had been struck dumb. We haven't even finalized the divorce yet. I continued, my tone calm, almost mocking as his wife. I still have the right to find him a concubine. Just wait. It'll happen without another word. I stood up and turned to leave, no longer interested in hearing the incoherent ramblings of someone so lost in their delusions. As soon as I was out of her sight, I took action. I sent someone to her hometown with instructions to hang banners the next morning. Much to Chloe's horror, there were large banners hanging right outside her house, and at the entrance of the school where her parents worked. They read, Chloe's parents are teachers and have a daughter who excels at seduction. She tried to become a married man's concubine, and now she's looking to do the same for her own husband. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Chloe's father, a teacher, was mortified when he saw the banner. His pride shattered. He stormed off to the hospital, furious and humiliated. Chloe, rushing home, was met with disappointment, harsh words, and the anger of her family. Relatives and neighbors alike condemned her actions, and the news spread like wildfire, tainting her reputation. With every passing hour, social media exploded with a torrent of criticism, each comment more venomous than the last. Meanwhile, my lawyer, who had been working tirelessly, managed to recover the house and a staggering $3 million in cash. The property preservation I had filed against Lucas had kept him from being able to help her no matter how much he might have wanted to. Chloe's life had turned into chaos, and Lucas's situation wasn't much better. The delay in our divorce proceedings had caused a ripple effect in his company, delaying crucial financing. He didn't want to let go of the family's debt, but with no evidence to prove that I had deliberately hidden assets, the divorce dragged on endlessly. Both Lucas and Chloe were frantically trying to salvage their lives, but they had lost their footing. Chloe accused Lucas of neglecting her, of failing to fix her academic issues, and for not even showing up when her father was hospitalized. She blamed him for everything: her ruined future, the disgrace of her reputation, the contempt from her parents, and the endless harassment from cyber bullies. As for Lucas, he had turned into a shell of the man he once was. He no longer exuded the vitality and happiness he once had. Instead, he became a burden, a weight around Chloe's neck. He was no longer the man who had once seemed so promising, and now neither of them could find peace. Eventually, the pressure of the company's delayed financing forced Lucas to acknowledge the family debt, and he agreed to my terms for the divorce. However, he stipulated that the company shares I held could only be sold to him, ensuring he could at least hold on to some semblance of control. This left him facing tens of millions in foreign debt. He thought he had saved the company, but what he didn't know was that I had already used my investment contacts to strategically target his latest round of funding. I had formed an alliance with other shareholders, and together we planned to push him out of the company. The financing came through, and just like that, Lucas was out on the day he was ousted. I made sure to be there. I watched him walk out of his office for the last time, carrying a cardboard box filled with the remnants of his career. He walked through the hallways of the place he had built, his once proud steps, now sluggish and resigned. And yet, despite the success of the company, my heart didn't fill with the satisfaction I had imagined. It reminded me of the day the company went public. The day we rang the bell at NASDAQ. No one remembered Lucas, the founder. Oh, perhaps a few still recalled his name, but no one would ever mention him again. He was just a forgotten figure, lingering in the shadows, watching helplessly as the company he had nurtured slipped away from his grasp. After everything was done, I took some time off and went to Africa, a place Lucas and I had once dreamed of visiting. But never could I witness the resilience of children in poverty, still full of hope despite their circumstances. And I marveled at the awe-inspiring sight of the great migration of wild animals standing in the vast, unspoiled African plains. I let go of the past, the good, the bad, and everything in between. It was all behind me. Now, 2 years later, I heard that Lucas had tried to start another business. Unfortunately, it didn't go well. His product lacked competitiveness, and he was left with nothing but debt and wasted investment. The next time I saw him was at an investment conference. He was there desperately seeking funding, surrounded by people, but his once shiny suit now hung limply on his thin frame. He looked like a shadow of the man I had once known. I was sitting at a different table, surrounded by potential investors, my attention divided. I observed him from a distance, feeling detached. He looked so out of place, struggling to hold his composure as I sipped my drink. I couldn't help but think about his recurring stomach problems, the ones he had when we first started the business. It seemed the drinking had taken its toll once more. After the event, I saw Chloe helping him into a taxi. She looked gaunt, her face drawn and unattractive, dressed simply and without grace. She seemed to have gotten what she wanted, or at least what she thought she wanted, back from vacation. I heard the full story. Chloe's parents had retired early in shame and moved away. She could no longer continue her studies and had chosen to stay with Lucas, helping him start his new venture. Later, some friends in the industry asked if I planned to continue making life difficult for them. I declined. With the stain of embezzlement and the rapid changes in the tech industry, Lucas had no chance of making a comeback. He was bound to follow the path of poverty alongside Chloe. It was better to let them be. One evening as I sat in the car, a hand reached across and gripped mine tightly. I turned to see the man beside me, his smile radiating warmth. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice light and playful. I squeezed his hand back, a grin spreading across my face. "I was just looking at you," I said, my heart full. His smile deepened, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me. For the first time in a long while, everything felt right. Lucas's extra. Lucas stood in the midst of the crowd, watching Charlotte as she handled the group of industry bigwigs with ease. She had transformed, radiating confidence in a high-end suit, handling negotiations for multi-million-dollar investments with grace and authority. This was a level he would never reach again. They hadn't seen each other in over 2 years. The last time he had only watched as the company he built rang the bell for its IPO, silently blending into the crowd. And now here she was again, a far cry from the woman he had once known. Lucas couldn't help but glance down at his own suit, which was too big for him now, the fabric sagging where it once fit him perfectly. He smiled bitterly, looking away. He was a far cry from the man who had stood beside Charlotte all those years ago. He had started over launching Xinjiang technology, but it had been a struggle. His new products lacked innovation, and without the resources he once had, the company was on the brink of failure. He was doing everything he could to secure funding, but the investors weren't buying it. "Mr. Bennett," one investor said dismissively, "if this was Gen technology, I'd be all in, but Xinjiang, forget it. Your products just don't have the edge anymore." But Lucas, desperate, wouldn't give up. "If I could make Gen bigger, I can make Xinjiang bigger too." He pleaded, but the investor had already turned away, not even listening to his desperate plea. Another round of drinks followed, but Lucas wasn't feeling the same as he used to. He clutched his stomach, the pain from his old ailment flaring up as he stumbled toward the bathroom. He overheard snippets of conversation. Lucas is done. He'll never recover from being kicked out of Genor. His products are terrible, and his reputation's worse. Who would still invest in him? It's his own fault. Charlotte was a powerhouse, and he threw it all away. It was painful to hear, but Lucas had no choice but to push on. He needed to keep trying no matter how hopeless it seemed. Lucas had long since grown, accustomed to the whispered conversations about him, the subtle glances, and the barely concealed judgment. He stood there pale as ever, his thoughts heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. The murmurs of those around him faded into the background, but he couldn't shake the sensation that they had all been listening, that his failure was now public knowledge. 3 years ago, people would have apologized for overhearing and acted with more care, but now they simply walked away with faint smiles, as if his pain was no longer of any importance to them. With a weary sigh, Lucas turned and walked back to the banquet hall, where the once bustling crowd had thinned out. He descended the stairs slowly, one hand pressed against his aching stomach, the dull pain constant, a reminder of his own weakness. Chloe was waiting in the lobby, her impatience barely hidden. The moment she spotted Lucas stepping out of the elevator, she rushed over to him, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. "Did you attract any investment?" she asked her, tone laced with barely concealed frustration. Lucas shook his head. No. Her face faltered for a brief moment before the irritation crept back. "Why haven't you invested yet? The company is on the brink of collapse, and we don't have money at home. How did Charlotte manage to trick you out of the company? You were about to go public, and now look at us. How could you let it get this bad?" Chloe's words were sharp, each one laced with blame. She didn't notice how Lucas winced in discomfort, his stomach a constant reminder of the internal storm brewing within him. Instead, she continued to vent her complaints, now more biting than ever. The idealization she once held for him had worn away over the last 2 years, replaced with disdain. "Chloe, my stomach hurts," Lucas muttered, his voice tight, trying to suppress the growing nausea. Chloe barely acknowledged his pain. "It's just your old stomach problems. Take some painkillers later," she replied dismissively, the same way. She always had the concern that had once been there, had faded into a monotonous routine of apathy as they climbed into the taxi. Lucas having sold his car long ago to cover some of their mounting expenses, he couldn't help but glance out the window. There in the distance was Charlotte's new car, a sleek color, Nan, and beside her, a man he didn't recognize. Charlotte, always so graceful, always so composed, her eyes glowing as she looked at him. He remembered when she had looked at him like that, her eyes filled with affection, her smile all for him. A surge of jealousy twisted in his chest, and the combination of that feeling, the damp, musty air in the taxi and the persistent ache in his stomach, made him want to vomit. He gripped the edge of the seat, his hands trembling slightly, and the taste of bile crept up the back of his throat. The taxi driver, unaware of the storm inside the car, muttered, "I thought everyone coming out of that place were big shots. Guess I was wrong." Lucas couldn't care less. The sound of raindrops hitting the car window was louder than the driver's words. Each drop, a soft reminder of the chaos unfolding in his life. Chloe, seated beside him, didn't stop her complaints. Her voice, laced with frustration, filled the space between them. "It's been 2 years, Lucas. The company is drowning in debt, and you are still no closer to rebuilding. I thought you could create another Gen. But look at you now, bankrupt and empty-handed. We have nothing. No house, no future. You should have invested somewhere else, at least in something that could have gotten us out of this mess. I haven't bought new clothes in almost 2 years. I have to plan every cent we spend. I'm still in my 20s, and yet I feel like I'm already living like I'm middle-aged." Her words were like needles, each one sinking deeper into him, a constant reminder of how much he had failed her and himself. Lucas, usually silent, couldn't hold back anymore. He turned to face her, his voice low but venomous. "Didn't you choose this path yourself? You were the one who came to me first. Have you forgotten?" His words hit her like a slap, and for a moment, Chloe fell silent, taken aback by the sudden shift. Lucas had always been the patient one, the one who swallowed his anger. But today, he couldn't hold it in any longer. The rage that had built up over the years spilled out his voice, dripping with mockery and fury. Chloe flinched, her anger momentarily replaced by something else. Fear. Perhaps the taxi ride seemed to stretch on forever. The silence between them almost suffocating Lucas, his hand clenched tightly around the plastic bag Chloe had handed him earlier, looked out the window once more. The streetlights blurred in his vision, and he couldn't help but wonder how they had gotten here. How had everything gone so wrong? He pounded the seat beside him in frustration, his clenched fist striking the worn fabric. Nothing could relieve the weight in his chest, the growing sense of failure that seemed to suffocate him. He had been with Charlotte for 11 years from the moment he had first met her in college. Her confidence and grace had captivated him. She had opened his eyes to a world he never knew existed. And with her by his side, he had built Geno technology from the ground up. But somewhere along the way, he had become arrogant, blind to the consequences of his actions. And then Chloe had entered the picture right at the peak of his success. She had worshipped him, admired him in a way Charlotte never had. And in that attention, he had found a temporary refuge from his insecurities. He hadn't thought about the consequences. He hadn't thought about losing Charlotte. He had only been thinking about himself. But the truth was, Charlotte was the one who had made him who he was. Without her, he was nothing. And now as he watched everything crumble, he knew he had lost the only thing that had ever truly mattered. They arrived home tired and drained. Lucas opened the door to their apartment, and the sight that greeted him only deepened his sense of despair. The apartment was a mess. Takeout boxes piled high on the coffee table, clothes scattered across the sofa, a reflection of the chaos in his life. Chloe, who had never been good at keeping things in order, had let everything slide, and Lucas, who had once taken care of things himself, now felt too exhausted to even try. He walked past the mess, each step feeling heavier than the last. He entered the bedroom, his body numb with fatigue, and collapsed onto the bed. He stared blankly at the ceiling, unable to escape the thoughts swirling in his head. Chloe hesitated before approaching him, her footsteps light and cautious. She could sense something was off. Something was wrong with Lucas today. "Does your stomach still hurt? Do you want some painkillers?" she asked, her voice soft. But the genuine concern that might have been there once was now lost in the emptiness between them. "Have you picked up the last medical examination report?" Chloe's voice was soft, but Lucas could hear the subtle concern beneath it. The pain in his stomach had become unbearable. He'd been so busy with the checkup and everything else that he'd forgotten to retrieve the results. His thoughts had been elsewhere, tangled with the chaos of his life. I forgot I'll get it tomorrow. I've been swamped lately, juggling the company and the family." He waved her off, unable to bear the weight of another conversation. Lucas shut his eyes, not wanting to hear Chloe's gentle words any longer. "I'll go by myself," he said, his tone heavy with resignation. The diagnosis hit him like a blow to the chest: advanced gastric cancer. As he stared at the results in his hand, the shock didn't come. There was no surprise, only a sense of finality, like a chapter had closed and the ink had dried. It was as though fate had written its conclusion in bold letters, and now he was simply living out the inevitable. The doctor's voice drifted in the background, but Lucas's mind had already wandered far away. This was retribution, wasn't it? He thought to himself bitterly. This was what he had deserved, for all the choices he had made, for everything he had failed to do, for the people he had hurt. Sitting alone in the sterile hospital lobby, he watched people bustle around him, oblivious to his turmoil. He stared at the floor, lost in his thoughts, the noise of the world around him fading into a blur. His mind kept returning to the company's financial strain, He knew he needed money desperately, but where would it come from? How would he fight this? And for how long? And then, as though a light had flickered in his mind, he thought of Charlotte. His heart swelled with a strange, unexpected gratitude. Despite everything, she had been there for him. She had cared for him when no one else did. He remembered how vehemently he had opposed her purchasing that insurance. Every year, the hundreds of thousands of dollars spent, but now it felt like a lifeline, a safety net. His last hope, the company, was beyond saving. Sin Chung had to be sold. It was the only option before it collapsed under its own weight. Even then, it wouldn't cover the external debts entirely, but at least it could stop the bleeding. Lucas knew that much. There were no illusions left. He planned carefully now in the most practical way he could. For the first time in years, Chloe didn't learn of the sale until it was done. She had always dreamed of a life of luxury, of being a rich wife. That dream had carried her through 2 difficult years with Lucas. But when it shattered, the woman he once knew seemed to lose her grip on reality. "Lucas, you bastard. Didn't you promise me a good life? You sold the company without telling me." Chloe's voice was shrill, filled with fury and betrayal. "What do you want from me? I've suffered with you. Are you even a man? You've ruined me." Lucas. Lucas only stared at her, his face unreadable, the weight of his words hanging heavy between them. "I have advanced stomach cancer," he said quietly, his voice flattened, devoid of emotion. The word struck her like a slap to the face, instantly silencing her. The anger left her eyes, replaced by confusion, and a flicker of something almost like pity. "I've made a plan." Lucas continued, his voice steady. "Despite the turmoil inside him, the company can no longer survive. We need to cut our losses now before it's too late. There will still be some debts after the sale, but selling this house and my insurance money will cover almost everything for my illness. The insurance will help as well. After everything is settled, we will need to find ordinary jobs to survive. Simple, but we'll make do." Chloe's face twisted in disbelief. "Sell the house." "I don't agree." Lucas looked her in the eye, his expression unreadable. "Find the insurance contract I gave you. I need to do the math." She stood there dazed, as the reality of the situation settled around her like a dark cloud. Lucas was speaking clearly now, but it was like he was speaking a different language. He continued, his tone even, but with an undercurrent of finality. "The house was bought before we married. I have the final say on selling it. But the debt, that's after marriage, so you'll need to listen to me. If you don't, you'll leave with half the debt." Chloe stood frozen, her face pale as the weight of his words sank in. Lucas paused, letting the silence stretch between them. He gave her time to process, his own mind swirling with the aftermath of decisions made long ago. "Insurance." Chloe, mermaid coming back to herself after a long silence. "What insurance?" Lucas gave a small, humorless laugh. "It's the insurance I asked you to buy every year. Charlotte found the best option for us, for people in our situation. It cost hundreds of thousands every year, but it could save my life now." He watched Chloe's blank stare, her eyes wide and confused. He had a sinking feeling in his stomach. "Don't tell me you don't have it," he said, his voice tight with disbelief. Chloe lowered her gaze, her voice faltering. I didn't understand it. I thought it was too expensive, so I ignored it. I didn't know for a moment." Lucas felt a surge of frustration, but there was no anger left in him, only exhaustion. His gaze hardened. There was nothing to say anymore. He didn't have the energy to question her any further. He wanted to believe this was all just a nightmare, that he would wake up tomorrow and things would be different, simpler. He would leave Chloe behind and protect his family with Charlotte. But that wasn't how life worked. There was no undoing the past without the money for expensive treatment. Lucas didn't last long. A year later, he passed away quietly and without fanfare. Chloe took care of him in his final days, but there was no tenderness in her actions. She caught his vomit, cleaned him up, stayed up nights, but her youth, her beauty, once so vibrant, seemed to wither under the strain. Her care wasn't born out of love. It was born out of fear. Fear that if she ignored Lucas, she would have to shoulder half of the debt. Lucas, in his final act, sold his house and personal assets, paying off most of the debts. There was barely anything left for Chloe. After his death, Chloe found herself in a small, cold rental apartment, sitting on a cheap bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mind drifted, filled with thoughts of the future. She had once imagined the glamorous white-collar life, the rich husband, but now she had no home to return to, no one to rely on. Her odd jobs were sporadic, barely enough to get by. The people she had once worked alongside had distanced themselves from her. She was alone, a young woman with nothing but her regrets and confusion to keep her company, a neurotic girl, resentful. One moment, lost and empty, the next. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to share your opinions and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you in the next video.